So let me just close this window. Welcome everybody. So this is our third class, inclusion across the talent lifecycle. First things is that our first class, we didn't have captions or transcripts. It is now there. There's a live transcript button on your side. If you want, you can choose show subtitles. And if you feel as if it's distracting, you can also disable it by selecting hide subtitles. Last class, we started with breathing in and breathing out. I really would like us to do this again, so feel free to participate. This is helpful to me personally, but I'm just gonna take a deep breath in, take a deep breath out. Sometimes I say breathe in abundance and breathe out scarcity because we're all in this together. I created a global diversity calendar, which I had shared the link with you, but on March 31st is International Transgender Day of Visibility. I'm sharing this because these days are coming up. It's a great opportunity to see and listen and learn about what's impacting other communities and to grow our understanding with the idea, again, that we're not experts on everything. We're not expected to be experts on everything, but we can lend our curiosity into what these days mean for different communities. Okay, so as we go more and more into this work, I think that one thing you'll find is you'll start seeing more and more of yourself in this work, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. That just means that we may be hitting on personal topics. I did a facilitation course with a great organization called Equity Matters, and they created a framework called Heads, Hearts, and Hands. And it's the idea that equity work is based on using your head, but also using your heart, and then using your hands. And the hands is supposed to imply action. So I invite us to do that. And what I'm going to do next is drop a poll in here. So if you don't mind answering this, did you think the polls we did last week were helpful? And I gave a couple options here.
Professor, while you're doing that, will you say the equity matters piece again? I'm so sorry, I had a call.
Not at all. Sure. It's heads. So when you do DEI work, or specifically equity, use your head, use your heart, and use your hands. Okay. So I'm going to share this. The results are yes. It gave me a chance to participate. 68% that said yes. 5% said no, there were too many, and 27% said some of them. So that's helpful to me. Thank you so much for that. I have another quick poll. I hope you don't mind. I don't have as many today, so I was very mindful about making sure that I wasn't bombarding you. This is the second of 4 that I have. Again, it's a question that I asked in the last class, which is, how did you feel after the last class? Okay, so we have a number of different results here, and what this shows you when you're doing DEI work is that we can't do everything for everybody, but we can be aware, right? And we can introduce things in different classes. So we can see that in the first, if you saw the results of the first poll that was shared, a lot of people were looking for structure. That number has gone down, which means that perhaps the second class offered more structure. But people are looking for an opportunity to participate in more discussion. So we're going to stick to that timing and make sure that we do that. And more people are feeling good with the flow. But there is a mixed bag of people looking for different things. So thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate your feedback and for you just sharing honestly about how you are experiencing this class so far. Okay, so here we have our third class. We're going to talk about inclusion across the talent life cycle, another topic that's very important to me personally, and we'll go through why. Again, these are our DEI values. We made the change from changing this from house engagement or how to engage to actual values. This really grounds us and really unites us in our purpose. So we want to create brave spaces. We want to focus on progress over perfection. We want to call people in versus call people out, replace judgment with curiosity, and communicate solutions versus problems. Again, quickly, our house rules. We have 5, so mute your mic when not speaking. Thank you for doing that. Use the raise hand function when needed. Number 3 is the one I really ask us to pay more and more attention to, and that's remember to be respectful and kind. This is not to say that anybody here is not respectful and kind. It's more so to say that in my experience, the most effective DEI practitioners are empaths. And we have some amazing people that are part of this class who specialize in EQ, emotional intelligence, and this is a skill that we can learn, including myself. So when we continue to hold others in a place of kindness, maybe not understanding everything that they're going through, but creating space for that, I think that's the way forward in this work. Listen when others are talking and stay focused and avoid multitasking. I can definitely say from leading this class, from your participation in the polls, that you're doing that. So thank you and keep that up. Okay, so house questions. Who is in the conversation? Who is not in the conversation? And then in the middle, how can we be more inclusive? So I've made a slight change. After class 1, I offered you a tip sheet. What I'm going to do moving forward, including in this class, is you can see a tiny little asterisk next to how can we be more inclusive. And what I've done is I've included a slide here, which, if you remember, we did a discussion group in breakout rooms in the last class, and I captured, and we didn't have time to share back, but I did put the question in the Google Classroom, and I had some people representing their teams or their groups share their suggestions. So I captured the 5 that I was reading. And this is going to be the best practices that we gained from the from the second class that you can use as examples as to how to be more inclusive when it comes to taking an intersectional approach in the workplace. So number 1 suggestion was, and Kathleen, I believe you shared this on behalf of your group, invite people to share multiple identities. So when we are speaking to people, we don't have to just refer to them as, okay, you as, Latina woman, or sorry, a Latina or a Latin person, what is that like? We can expand that to say, what identities do you relate to and how do you feel they're impacted in the workplace? Number 2 is to capture both qualitative data and quantitative data. I work with a lot of data scientists in DEI, and they make the distinction that when we talk about data, we are talking about 2 different areas. And if we're only talking about numbers, we're not doing full justice to this work. Number 3, offer data analysis sections per group. So when we do a write-up or we offer recommendations or we're looking for resources on policies and practices, it's really helpful to people reading or listening to what you're asking for to see it broken down by groups. So we can say, for example, mothers of color have experienced, or Black women have experienced this in the workplace based on our qualitative and quantitative data. This is the program that we recommend, and these are the resources that we need. Number 4, build programs for the most marginalized. We've spoken about this a few times, but when you build for the most marginalized, you're effectively building for everybody. And finally, Andrea, I believe this was your suggestion on behalf of your group, tie back to the organizational mission. I thought this was an excellent 5th point. When we think about how to be more inclusive, we don't just want to think about this as a DEI practice. We want to think about this as an organizational-wide practice. Okay. So our agenda today. Before we get started, I want to start with an icebreaker. The icebreaker is, what is the single biggest motivator for you at work? And I'd love for you to share one word in the chat as to what that is.
Say it one more time. What is the biggest?
What is the single biggest motivator? Okay, so we're seeing a number of different comments come in. By asking this question, I'm inviting you all to share your thoughts. And when you see that from 50 plus people sharing that, it can be really powerful. It's a way to invite people into conversation. Maybe it's not perfect because some people have more than one. They want the paycheck and the compensation, but they also want to feel that they're making impact. But it is a low lift icebreaker that we can use the chat room for. So thank you for your responses. It's interesting and really powerful to see what you've written here. Respect, impact, experience, a number of different motivations that we're seeing for people doing this work. So today, we're going to go through a couple things, specifically around the talent life cycle. We do have some people in this group that are in talent acquisition or HR. So when we do our breakout rooms, I'm going to intentionally try to put one person from that practice in each group. But we will be going through these different lessons, the 5 stages of the talent life cycle, the objectivity myth, tackling and interrupting bias, wage discrimination, and maintaining anonymity. I also got feedback last time that it's helpful if I tell you what the workshop is, or the discussion point around our breakout rooms before, so you have a little bit of time to think about it. So if you bear with me, I'm just going to quickly tell you in my words what we're going to do later on so that it's in the back of your mind. The workshop is going to be the company that we're going to be looking at. The case study will be Amazon. And the situation is, Amazon is a company that employs 1.3 million people and shares diversity data of people that they hired, so that join the company. But they do not share diversity data of people that have left the company. So when we get into groups later on in our breakout rooms, I want you in your groups of about 5 or so to ask, what is one practice that we can put in place to be inclusive in 1 out of the 5 talent life cycle stages. So I'll go into that, what the stages are, but that's going to be my ask of you. And then we're going to come back as a wider group and we're going to share that. And as a takeaway, you're going to have a bunch of ideas as to how to be inclusive across the whole talent life cycle. So hopefully that helps. Okay. So land acknowledgement, we've seen this slide a few times, but I'm going to practice in real life what I do with this slide so that you see it, a practitioner actually putting this into action. So I want to acknowledge that I'm on the traditional land of the Coast Salish people, including the Duwamish people, past and present. I honor with gratitude the land itself. The reason I'm doing this exercise and I'm showing you this slide and doing this land acknowledgement is because it is important to understand the history that has brought me to reside on this land and to seek to understand my place within history. And my call to action is for, let's assume I'm talking to an organization. My call to action is to make an organizational donation of X amount of dollars to nativeland.ca, a land acknowledgement website that operates on a voluntary basis. So what I've done today is I've not just shown you a slide and said, okay, this is a slide we use. I'm trying to put in practice what we actually do with a slide like this in our DEI work. So hopefully that's helpful to you all as you start practicing more and more DEI work. Okay, so a review of last class. I'm going to quickly drop, I believe this is our last poll in here. Okay, which one of these topics did you find relevant to class 2? And there's options here to click multiple. So feel free. Okay, so as we see the results coming in, 27% said what is intersectionality. A lot of you found the wheel of power and privilege valuable. A lot of people do find this wheel valuable because we see ourselves in it. And most importantly, it gives us an aid to bring people into conversation because it says we're all part of this work and that privilege is not a switch, it's a spectrum and we all hold some degree of it. And a lot of you said all, so that was really, really helpful as well. So thank you for that. So I just want to reiterate, in our first class, diversity is a range of human differences. Inclusion is feeling like we can bring those differences to the workplace or whatever environment it is. And equity is a principle of fairness. And a way to think about it in the workplace is the programs and policies we create so that people feel like they have a fair opportunity. If we want to go a little bit deeper, we can talk about equity of opportunity and equity of outcome, but we can discuss that a little bit later as we go through more classes. Last class, we spoke about intersectionality. So a reminder, intersectionality is a prism, it's a lens through which we recognize compounding isms. And by isms, I mean racism, sexism, classism, and how they compound on top of each other. It was coined by Kimberly Williams Crenshaw. And in workplaces, if you only gather data on one identity and you only create programs and policies for one identity, you may just end up seeing a transfer of power. But if we think in terms of multiple identities and we co-create solutions for the most marginalized, that solution will likely work for a greater number of people. The wheel of power and privilege is a way to understand ourselves and bring those that are on the fence into a DEI commitment. And the diversity iceberg is a way to understand others and bring those that are on the fence into a DEI commitment. So earlier I had suggested maybe creating a folder of places that you want to house these resources. I would definitely capture a couple that we had in our last class there. One of my mentors and old managers who's now a DEI practitioner, her name is Sasha Thompson. She runs an organization called the Equity Equation. She refers to these as aha moments. So they're the moments that your mind suddenly goes, oh, I didn't think about that. So as we do this work, we're all in different parts of the learning journey. If we feel like we really need to convince leadership or bring leadership or different people, stakeholders into this work, these are aha moments or visuals that can really strike them in a way that they may not have felt that before. Like, okay, we really need to do the work here. Okay, so on to the talent life cycle. What is a talent life cycle? So a talent life cycle is a holistic view of the critical stages of an employee's time within an organization. So I'm going to give you a couple statistics. As many as 30% of job seekers have quit a job in less than 3 months of starting. 30%. 50% of employees voluntarily leave a job before they reach the 2-year mark. And And when considering the fact that employees who say there's a low level of respect among their teams are 26% more likely to quit their jobs. So these are striking numbers, and it draws attention to how we need to focus on not just one stage of the talent life cycle, but all stages of the talent life cycle. And here they are. So I want to start by saying that there's different versions of this image. This is, if you Google image talent life cycle, or if you look up talent life cycle, you may see some that have 6 stages. You may see some that look like a line. I chose this one because for me, it represents what the talent life cycle is. I also like how it's a circle, because what it shows is that, like, we need to put our effort into making sure that we continue this work and not just end it when somebody leaves the organization. I don't know how best to do this, but I'd love to get a raise of hands if you are in the talent and acquisition space, or if you are in the HR recruiting space, because when we do our breakout rooms, I think this would be a wonderful way to learn from you if you're willing to share. So Desiree, Farah, thank you for sharing. Patrice, thank you. Okay. So feel free to lower your hand, but thank you for that. So what we have here is every stage is an opportunity to check in with how people are feeling and what opportunities we need to create and barriers we need to remove for a fair experience within the workplace. So yesterday we talked about this. 2 things need to happen in DEI for it to be effective. Number 1 is removing the barriers, and number 2 is creating the opportunities. If we do one without the other, we can still lose people, right? I'm going to give you some in real life practices. Actually, I'm going to give you one for each stage, and there's a lot more, but I just want to warm us up into this conversation. So in the recruiting stage, one in real life practice that's really effective is writing your job descriptions in an inclusive way. I've seen job descriptions, as I'm sure you have, that use language that deters some people. For example, using the word ninja, using the word warrior, using the word guru. Even there's some instances where there aren't particular words that are used, but it's generally the way the job description is written that can deter certain groups. There's a wonderful organization by the name of Texio, Textio, that takes your job descriptions and does a scrub on it to see the words that don't land well with people. So if your organization has the resources, that's some, you may want to put resources to that to see what they can offer in terms of some better suggestions for language. In real life practice for onboarding is to, when you onboard, have an organizational DEI statement. When people see DEI statements in the beginning of their introduction to the organization, it makes them feel like it's an organizational commitment, and it should be an organizational commitment. But often some organizations leave it up to the teams or the managers to talk about it, and it goes to the wayside. So that's a in real life practice for that stage. For training and development, a good in real life practice is to allocate a professional development budget. A lot of organizations have a allocated spend per individual. Some of them don't if you're smaller organizations. But if you're in a DEI position, if you can find some sort of a budget, that's really helpful to this stage. For the 4th stage, which is retention, a good in real life practice is to have DEI audits. We're going to talk about this in a later class, but when you have a third-party consultant come in and do a DEI audit as to how people are doing within the organization, that's a really effective way to be inclusive at this stage. Another thing is to do regular pulse checks. So not just once a year, but At Amazon, we used to do every day there was a question that would pop up on your screen, and you had an opportunity to answer it to gauge your inclusion. Finally, in the exit stage, a really good practice is to ask open-ended questions and implement the feedback. So you don't just want to ask the question when people leave, you want to do something with it. So there's a lot more practices here. We're going to talk about it in our breakout rooms, but I wanted to give you some in real life practices. Jen, I see your hand up. I'm just going to go through a couple more slides, and I will definitely get to you before we get to the breakout stage. Is that okay?
Yep.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you. I see some great suggestions in the chat as well. Tony, you were saying I didn't raise my hand in time, but I'm in HR, so thank you for that. Gender decoder is another good one. Great. I didn't know about gender decoder, so thank you for sharing that. And yes, could also be retention depending on the organization to keep leaders engaged. Okay, so this image right here is one that is just sitting with me today after, I don't know if a lot of you were following what's been happening in the news with Judge Jackson, but this is an image that's been circulated a lot in the DEI space, and I relate it to the objectivity myth. And I shared this because with my background in journalism, I was very often told to be objective, and I stopped doing that. None of us are objective. We are all influenced by our experiences in life, our personal experiences, our professional experiences. So how we determine, somebody's value is very much based on what we've been taught is valuable. A couple identities that we may want to talk about is age, right? There are a lot of biases around age. We like to think that we're objective, but we're not. Often people that are outside the working ages are thought there's a bias there that they're not as productive. Mothers, we've heard feedback that mothers are often made to feel like they're not as available. People with disabilities, we've heard the feedback that a lot of them have been made to feel like they're not as capable. People with different body sizes are often made to feel like, we've heard from research that they're made to feel like they're not as hardworking. So this image gives us, that visual of what it's like when somebody is determining our value within an organization, perhaps at the recruiting stage, but they're not representative of our lived experience or professional experience even. Okay, so here's a quote. It's actually one of mine. Analyze people's experiences through the entire talent life cycle, and do a deep dive into who is staying, who's leaving, and why. We can't fix a problem if we don't know if it exists. I had written this on Twitter and it was circulated very widely, so I wanted to share that with you. So what we have here is a slide on bias. I really wanted to walk you through this because the questions that we've been asking for a long time is, do we have biases? There's three pieces that come to mind. Number one is a Harvard Implicit Association test. It's called the IAT. It's widely known as one of the largest tests that have been circulated the most to gauge whether people have biases. There is criticism around it, so I encourage you to read up on that, but you may want to check out that test. There's another there's another real life experiment that was done in the Boston Symphony in 1952, where they had people play instruments on stage, and then a group of people determined whether they were qualified to be part of the symphony. And then they did that same audition behind a curtain, and they found that I believe 30% more women got through that stage when people could not see who they were. So that gave insights into how our biases are definitely there. And then there is a very famous experiment by Jane Elliott, for those of you that know her, an educator who did a blue eyes, brown eyes experiment where she took a classroom full of young children and she told children that have brown eyes that they're doing great, they have certain privileges, and she saw their effectiveness go up a lot. And then the people that were told that they had blue eyes, and she switched this group. She put a collar around them. She said that they weren't as important, and she saw their productivity and effectiveness go down. So I think that we've moved beyond these conversations to, do we have biases, towards we all have biases. In fact, organizations are built on biases, and what can we do? What policies and practices can we create to tackle these biases? So some examples that come to mind are, I, for a long time, didn't have a visa to work in the US. And a specific policy or practice that would have helped me is an organization that would sponsor somebody with my skill set. I was not recruited easily by tech companies in the US because I don't have a US education. What would have helped me is if the organization extended their recruiting practices to recognize alternative, international, and vocational education, right? I'm told as an Asian woman that I'm overrepresented in the workplace. What would help is a policy and practice that would break down data by race and gender and actually share the findings that the biggest in-group racial difference in the workplace is between Asian women and Asian men. It's doubled in the past 20 years or so. So the top earners are significantly higher than the lowest earners. So I'm just giving you examples about how when we talk about bias, we want to not just talk about the biases that you and I hold, but we want to talk about the organizational biases, and we want to start thinking about the policies and practices that we can implement to get us to a place where we can interrupt these problems that are happening. So this slide in particular is something that you can show to leaders and say, these are 6 major ways that we can improve our workplace when we tackle these biases. Okay, so this is another great slide. It is shared by Software Advice. We are susceptible to bias in every stage of the talent lifecycle, but this shows us the 2 areas where we need the most work is the hiring decisions and the promotion decisions. So I really want you to start thinking about that when we get into our groups. Some of us will have an opportunity to come up with ideas in this stage. Again, to warm you up, I wanted to give you some in real life examples. Specifically for the hiring stage, some of the things that we can do is have somebody on the interview committee, the interview group that looks or is representative of the person that we're hiring. At some companies, you have an option to ask for that. So you can say, I want somebody from an underrepresented group. So you don't end up in that situation of that image of that woman sitting in front of a group of what appear to be white men who may not relate to her experiences. Don't depend on your personal networks. If your leadership is mostly one homogenous group and we reward them for giving us referrals, we're just perpetuating those hiring practices. A good in real life practice for promotion decisions is to establish the criteria beforehand. So if we just walk in and say, okay, Jillery, I see you on the screen right now. Jillery, I want you to gauge whether Jen is worthy of a promotion. Let us know what you think. Jillery may come back and say yes or no, but if we give Jillery specific criteria, then Jillery can say, okay, I've looked at this and I've looked at that, and this gives me a reasoning behind why I'm doing what I'm doing. Another in real life example is to gauge people on situations instead of styles. So an example of a situation may be, how has somebody managed the change from in-person to hybrid? And a style, maybe somebody comes in and speaks quietly. Right? So the style is often embedded in our cultural styles, in our communication styles, and all workplaces have a tendency to prefer one over the other. But if we look at the situation, then we're having a very different discussion. So after this, I'm going to share a really great resource. Actually, let me see if I can drop it in here. It's done by an organization called Culture Amp, and they talk about 10 different performance biases and how to mitigate them. So I definitely bookmark that. So Nina, I see your hand up. I will ask you your question as well before we get into our breakout rooms. I just want to make sure I get through these slides. So just bear with me, please. So today's marketplace is incredibly competitive in every industry around the globe. The difference between success and failure is talent, period. This is a great quote by Indra Nooyi, who is the CEO of Pepsi, has since stepped down, but it's really important to, share these quotes as we do this work. Okay, wage discrimination. So this is a slide that I wanted to share with you because you can see, and again, we can be more intersectional here, right? This is not necessarily an intersectional data piece, but we can see that based on the charge filings that have come forward, there is a lot of people who have placed cases based on race and gender, and also disability, age, national origin, maybe not so much religion, but perhaps that's a case of safety and people not wanting to report that. And what we want to do is we want to create policies and practices around the data, right? Some in real life practices that we can have here is to share your salary information when you create jobs. When people apply for jobs, they put a lot of effort in, right? When you share your salary information, that's very helpful to people applying. When people come into a company, it also is really helpful to share salary information for their particular band, right? So they may be in a particular, every organization has a different band, but telling them what the band is, it could be your earning potentials between 40 and 60,000, and you're here. That gives people an idea as to how much further they can grow, or if they need to advocate to get to the next band entirely. And finally, creating programs and policies that close that wage gap. So we'll be talking about that more further down when we go into mentorship and sponsorship programs. So our last slide before our breakout rooms is gathering anonymous feedback. Jen, you were wonderful in sharing some great tips here. So I would definitely encourage you to speak to Jen more. Jen, if you're comfortable with that. But I wanted to share this because part of gauging, the talent life cycle is through surveys and feedbacks and focus groups. And not everybody, we need a degree of psychological safety. We can't assume that what we gather is necessarily everything. Often people can be labeled as combative, ungrateful, entitled when they say anything at all. They may be pushed out of teams because of troublemaker status. And so what we want to do is we ideally want to collect information on their identities, but not necessarily their names. But we also want to decide on the method based on the size of the organization. If you have a size of, let's say, 4 people, that doing a focus group, everybody knows who's giving what opinion, right? So we can be a little bit more creative with our methods depending on the size of the group that we're trying to gather information on. So always keep this in mind as we go forward. Okay, so this is one of my favorite quotes. When you hire someone, you hire that person. When you lose someone, you lose that person and their entire community. I firmly stand by this. When you have a poor experience within an organization, you often go back and tell your trusted people and your community, and in turn, they may not join that organization. So I think this is a shift that we can help organizations make so they stop thinking of us all as individuals and start thinking of us as networks of people that work together. Andre, thank you so much for sharing. I'm just glancing at the chat here. Jody Anbury has done an amazing TED Talk on how you should not bring your authentic self to work. It's worth listening to as we think about the questions that we ask people when we develop these surveys and focus groups. Okay, so that takes us to our exercise. We have about 35 minutes. So before we go forward, Jen, did you want to ask your question? I want to give you that space.
Um, yeah, so I think the biggest thing was when we talk about the job description things, there's an excellent woman named, or excuse me, there's an excellent person named Katrina Kibben, and they do job descriptions really, really well. You could buy their e-course for like $300, and they just explain like how many times we put um, years of experience, and years of experience are completely pointless because it's like someone having 4 years of experience. What's the difference to having 5 years versus being very specific about the skill set that they need to have for X amount of years? Like, if it's manage a $500,000 budget, then have it be that, not needs 3 years of experience. And then the second thing is um, in terms of reviewing, there's an article called, I think it's like Halos and Horns, and it talks about whenever people are doing performance reviews, they should have at least 3 examples per thing, not just one of so and so did something excellent, but to have numerous ones, because what it shows is people of color will have one thing that will drop their promotion, and white people will have one thing that will give the raise.
Thank you so much for sharing. Do you mind dropping Katrina's name in the chat or in the Discord channel? I think that would be really helpful to everybody, as well as that second resource that you shared.
Yep.
Appreciate you sharing, and excellent, excellent points, especially around the years. Another thing that I've heard is you don't have to put the years. Let's say you have a formal degree or you did a course or something. You don't have to put the years that you graduated or you went to school in there. You also don't need to put your address in there. You also don't need to put your picture in there. These practices are slowly and surely changing. There's another excellent study out there that's shown that people who have foreign sounding names got callbacks at a far less rate statistically than people who have more so-called easier to pronounce names. And so how does that hurt people? My added nuance to this that I really wanted to say is that we can make things hidden up until a point, and then we're still in those organizational cultures, right? So that may get someone in the door by, let's say, removing this or removing that, but ultimately we want to create a space for them where they don't feel like they have to continue to hide those identities, right? um, yes, Faith, thank you for sharing our ghetto sounding names. Yes, exactly. Okay, and I hope you don't mind, before we go into the exercise, and Nina, I want to hear your question. I wanted to tell you a very quick personal story. My husband is Muslim. His name is Fahim. His middle name is Adam, and he goes by Fahim on his passport, and I've seen him use the name Adam at work, and there has been some really big lessons personally around that in my family, about the opportunities I've seen him have, both for applying for applications for housing, for getting back job interviews, to even being told by managers to please join the call with other people from the same racial background, because when people hear the name Adam, they assume that it's somebody who is not Muslim, so they are more likely to respond and take instructions from him. So it's been an interesting slash pretty disturbing experiment. He has gone by Adam for 42 years, but it really is true that a lot of these things are barriers, and we need to find ways across the entire talent life cycle to make people feel included through policies and practices that challenge our structures. Nina, your question?
Thank you. This has to go with the hiring um, and I don't know if there's a direct answer right now or it's a lot, but we say we want to be a diverse organization, and then all of the new hires have not been diverse. And if you look at the 18 leaders at our company, as well as board members and advisors, one is of a global majority group. And I just sometimes have a hard time knowing how to call that out when the mission and the goal is to support DEI, and yet it's not being done.
Okay, great question. there is something called the Rooney Rule that some organizations have experimented with. It's the idea, it was started by the NFL, but it's the idea that you interview at least two underrepresented folks. Ideally, I think it's 30%, so that the chances of them being considered for that opportunity is more statistically, so that they're not the only. There's a great practitioner by the name of Nilofer Merchant who writes about the phenomenon of being the only. You're less likely to be recruited if you are the only because of a lot of these biases that are baked into the organization. And another one is related to the exercise that I gave you. I don't know if you all had a chance to look at it, but it's the pipeline myth. A lot of leaders still hold on to this. I just heard one the other day that said, I want people of diverse backgrounds, but they aren't any in this industry. I call straight BS on that because every industry, I mean, even if you look at tech, we like to think that tech is, you know, predominantly men, but if you look at history in Washington, D.C., a lot of Black women were in computer science while men were away at war. There's so many historical examples of how people dominated particular workplaces, and then with time, we left people out. When we go to where people are and we recruit people where they are, whether it's on their campuses, within their communities, and we develop those relationships before and after we recruit, it's a really effective way to bring in more candidates. Okay, so let's get into the exercise.
Dia, I was just gonna say the Rooney Rule is really problematic, and the NFL is actually talking about canceling it because Brian Flores of the Dolphins was fired, and when he went for another job, they had already hired a white guy, but just tried to interview him. So the Rooney Rule is something that a lot of Black people are really pissed off about.
Jen, thank you so much for sharing that. Yes, I actually have been reading that, but not enough. So I want to make sure that that's something that I read more about. So I've definitely bookmarked that. And I think this is an example of something that was suggested, but we want to read up on why there may be criticism around that. So I appreciate you sharing. Okay, so here's our exercise again, hopefully mentioning it at the beginning gave you a little time to think about it. So again, Amazon is a company that employs 1.3 million people and shares diversity data of people that have joined the company, but does not share diversity data of people that have left the company. I'm going to put you in breakout rooms. Let's say, I'm trying to think of the right way to do this, because when you were in breakout rooms last time, can somebody tell me, did you see the number, like, did you see a number associated with your group? No, okay. So,
when you get, so pay attention to which group they're accepting. It tells you you're being asked to join group 2.
Okay, great. Okay, great. So that's helpful. So group 1 and 2, I'm going to ask you to focus on the first stage of the talent life cycle, which is recruiting. Room 3 and 4, I want you to focus on onboarding. Groups 5 and 6, if you can focus on training and development. And group 7 and 8, if you can focus on, sorry, let me just make sure I got them all here. Retention, and then the last group, and I'll write this in the chat when you're in there, would be exit. And what I'd like you to do is try to come up with, as a group, with one stage to disrupt bias. Sorry, one practice, and make sure it's rooted in equity, and really try to think about it from a systemic place. Thank you so much, KG, for doing that. I appreciate that. It's sometimes a little bit challenging when there's a lot of windows open, so thank you for that. Okay, so again, like last time, I'm going to put you in the breakout rooms, and there are going to be 10 with about 5 people each. And again, the ask is to come up with one in real life equitable practice that can disrupt organizational bias. Here you go. All right, my friends, welcome back. There's just not enough hours in the day, I'm telling you. So group 1 and 2, we have about 5 minutes to do this exercise. I wanted to hear from you, but if we can make it a short suggestion that others can learn from, and just keep in mind if you can do maybe 30 seconds each, just have one person share so that we can come out. And I'm writing this down. So what we're going to end up with is 10 practices, 2 from each stage, that we're going to create like a worksheet out of that everyone can take away. So someone from group 1 for recruiting, what's that one practice that you came up with?
I don't think we identified who was going to speak on our behalf. We came up with a few different ideas, but one of them was expanding like the sourcing networks, like in regards to recruitment, diversifying like where you actually, what organizations you reach out to based off of, connections and rapport that's been built with outside agencies or organizations or community groups and so forth.
That's great. Thank you.
You all want to add to that? Anyone wants to add from that group?
I would add really quickly, just having an authentic employer brand, if this is a priority. DEI use that as a recruiting tool to authentically communicate.
That's great. Thank you. And this is on me. I should have said, in our next couple groups, I'll ask you to suggest somebody so that you're not put on the spot. But that's wonderful. Thank you for your suggestions. Group 2, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I think group 2 before asked if I would give our topic, and it aligns with what group 1 said, and so about where you're posting the position in order to get to that diverse population. So I would add another thing that came up that was a really great idea. Hopefully group 2 is in agreement with this, is being open to adding the pay scale to the job ad and compensating for time during interviewing.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Compensating for time. More and more, a lot of employers are asking for some sort of a presentation or something, but that not everybody has the equal, we're not all in a position to do that. So I appreciate you adding that point. Group 3 and 4, what was for onboarding, what was your suggestions?
We talked a little bit about offering an accessibility package, kind of like a moving package that allows folks to not have to necessarily like detail or defend any accessibility needs, but have a fund that's already kind of dedicated to everyone's ability to access good workplace environments.
That's great. Yeah. Even accessibility practices and how we onboard, and you're right, just not having that fund available so that somebody doesn't have to come right out and say, oh, by the way, I don't feel like I can onboard fairly is key. So I appreciate that added nuance. Group 4, was there anything that you wanted to add to that?
I think we're group 3.
Group 3, sorry.
Oh, okay. I think there was a couple. One was when it comes to lack of diversity within maybe certain faculty hires, to bring in someone from the adjunct community, which has tended to be more diverse. I want to attribute that to Dr. Dunlap. And then there was some conversation around being embarrassed or not comfortable putting up a DEI statement in onboarding because we're not quite living it up. So maybe a solution to that could be just being transparent about where we are in our journey, aspiring toward our DEI goals.
Love it. Absolutely. Coming back to our earlier class, don't say something if you don't mean it, right? So the transparency is a lot better than what I suggested, which is have that DEI statement that can be very performative, but saying that we are in a place of, getting to a place of commitment is a lot more effective. Group 5 and 6, can you share one quick practice?
This is for training and development, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. So I'd love to speak for our group quickly. We just thought about learning styles. I think a lot of companies do miss this and kind of go with the standard like slideshow. And I think some companies even miss out on doing live training. So just thinking about different platforms in order to do that training, and then also giving employees some choice there. Sometimes companies come with a one-size-fits-all package and they may not have a class that we're interested in, so getting that feedback from your employee base is really important. And if the learning and development team doesn't like have the capacity or resources to do what the employees are asking for, having money or resources to allocate to employees to go and seek that outside of the company is super important. And then I think lastly, what we put was just having specific learning paths for different roles throughout the company, just to really support employees through that full talent life cycle.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Group 6, anything you wanted to add to that? If we can just keep it to 1, because I want to make sure we do Q&A for the last 5 or 6 minutes.
Was that us, ladies? Is Kathleen speaking?
Kathleen?
Okay.
Did you want to? Oh, is it our turn?
Is it our
Kathleen,
turn?
we're 9.
Oh, we're 9. Okay.
For retention, are we doing now?
We're on training and development, the second group.
I think group 6 spoke instead of group 5, but we put some things in the chat, so we're good.
Okay, thank you for that. Survey employees to ask what their needs are, bring the opportunities to employees, don't rely on employees to find their own opportunities. Okay. Retention, any thoughts there?
Yeah, hi. Sorry. We're
No,
group
go
7.
ahead. You go ahead. Go ahead.
No problem. So we focused on promotions for retention, and just a couple things that we thought about was standardizing the promotion practice, which there's a ton of things that can go into that. So looking at panel reviews for promotions and ensuring that there's a diverse panel of reviewers, organizational and agency resumes. So allowing employees to have, all of their accolades and everything they've done while they were with the organization to showcase that in the interview process. And of course, data and tracking around promotions, which would help, us understand, what's been happening with the organization, how diverse the promotional process is. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I'm glad you focused on promotion because that's a big one. Okay, so skipping ahead to exit, the 2 groups there, do you have any best practices around the exiting stage?
I'll share. In our group, we discussed the importance of, identifying, especially within exit interviews, making sure that we actually have leadership in that space if the person who is exiting feels comfortable, because a lot of times, especially when it comes to folks who are minoritized and marginalized in predominantly white spaces, there is this notion that our culture is okay and our culture is fine, when really the main issue is culture. And so having folks of leadership actively listen and sit in that space, and also making sure that they are clear not to interrupt, and they are sitting there actively listening from a constructivist standpoint, and then, sitting with HR moving forward to make sure that as we're collecting that data, making sure that we are creating and developing frameworks to reshape our policies from an anti-racist, anti-bias lens, and looking at all forms of implicit bias as they manifest.
I love what you said about active listening. There's listening and then there's active listening. So we want to definitely make the distinction. Active listening is listening as a practice and not just sitting back and saying, okay, you do the work. Active listening means you are doing the work as you listen. So appreciate that added point. And the last group for exit, did you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
Kathleen?
Yes, sorry. Now I can go. Just one point?
Yes, please.
So one thing that I really
great comment was whatever your exit findings are should be transferred to your hiring practices.
Love it.
So really learning from the back end and trying to put it on the front end.
Yeah, that's excellent. I think that's where the circle comes back. So again, I'm learning too as you share. Hopefully in your groups you were able to share some ideas. Again, collectively we can come up with amazing ideas and then exchanging them back and forth so that it's not just sitting in our own minds. We're doing something with it. I really want to thank you for not just coming up with ideas that are rooted in making people feel good. These are policies and practices and structural changes. And that's where you begin to see the changes happening within organizations. So I have it written down. I will transfer that to a sheet. We have about 4 minutes left, and I'll go over by another 5 for Q&A. When we had the office hours in the beginning, we did have Shar and Karonda and Julia that I didn't get to. Did you want to start, Shar, with your question? Okay, sorry if I had asked you that already. Karonda, did you have a question? And Julia, you were next.
I guess the question that I want to ask is not related to what we have been speaking for the last classes, but I have 2 questions that might be connected. One is I've been seeing a lot of DEI experts working more as a consultant rather than working at full-time job, and I know that there's no right or wrong answer, but I want to see your perspective when it comes to opportunities, job opportunities. Do you feel like there are less job opportunities, full-time job opportunities, when we compare to being a freelancer or a consultant? And the second question is about, I want to hear also your perspective about how to start, because I've seen a lot of opportunities for director of diversity and inclusion or manager of diversity and inclusion, and there are very few entry-level positions, so I'm not sure how to get into the point where I'm in the job market.
So Julia, I can definitely speak to this quickly. I have both been in the corporate space or organizational space, and now I'm doing my own consulting. It really depends on what you're looking for in a lifestyle. Consulting is challenging because it is an oversaturated space, but I think if you know what your superpower is or your strength is within the DEI space, instead of being somebody who says I can do it all, I think that's really helpful in moving forward. One learning moment I'm having personally is definitely know your own worth, because a lot of people want to try to take as much as they possibly can from you and not necessarily compensate fairly. So have those conversations with the community and see what the going rate is, and don't negotiate on that. It can really lead to burnout, which, as we talked about in the first class, can bring us back to the beginning. In terms of entry levels, lean into referrals. Referrals are an incredibly important way to get into this space. Have somebody who's reached out to a lot. If they're not looking, have them recommend you, and then you can get to a place where you can interview and hopefully, see what the options are that are to the best of your, what your reality is. So hopefully that's helpful. I see Patrice, your hand was up. And I wanted to start by saying we are at time in about 30 seconds. So if there are more questions, hopefully we can address them in the next office hours or in the Discord chat. I think this living document is an excellent idea. In the Google Classrooms, I will detail the optional assignment for assignment number 3, and we can continue this discussion there. So Patrice, we have time for you, and then Eunice, Farah, and Luz, if you're okay, if we can do this at the top of the hour for the next office hours, that would be wonderful. Thank you for understanding. Patrice? And anybody who needs to drop off, please feel free.
I just want to say very quickly, from what I've seen as a recruiter who also works in HR and does development and also works in DE&I, what I am seeing, and I love this, is candidates are coming to the table because it's a candidate market right now, wholeheartedly. So candidates are coming to the table saying, I want to talk to your DEI person. I want to know the diversity statistics for the office in which I'm working. And one of my favorite things I saw was from the CEO of Elvest, was like, when it comes to picking the company that you're going to work for, yes, you're going to go to the website, yes, you're going to look at what they're posting on social media, but you need to look at their C-suite. Is there any diversity there? And then we get questions about, well, why is your C-suite predominantly Caucasian cisgender males? And so that's what I'm seeing, and just wanted to throw that out to people. I'm just enjoying the fact that that's the deeper dive that people are doing into DEI when they're looking at companies that they want to work for.
Patrice, you said what I think was missing from this conversation is that it is an employee's market. So knowing that arms us with options, right? We don't have to necessarily go to a place where we're surviving. We can go to a place where we feel like we're thriving. So let's exercise that optionality and remember we're at a place that we've never been at in our collective history of working, which is, you know, we're reshifting our values. We're reshifting our organizational values. So again, another wonderful resource, Patrice. We would love to hear more from you in the chat so that you can speak to that.
Thank you. And just to add to that, I think the reverse is for those who need to go back to your C-suites. That's the argument.
Yeah.
There. That's the demand. Thank you.
Of course. So Eunice, Farah, and Luce, we will start with you next Tuesday. If it's urgent or relevant to this class, please feel free to message me. Again, I'm holding space for burnout, mental health, care, time with your families, time with yourself. Please take care of yourselves. And to all of you, thank you for sharing your best practices. I'm also a student in this class and that I learned from all of you. So just wanted to give back my gratitude and just want to say I appreciate you all.
I had a quick question about salary because it's time sensitive. My apologies. So someone offered me a job and they're asking me what my budget is. How can I flip it and ask them what is the salary range?
Somebody is asking you what your budget is. This is a new practice we're seeing a lot of people do now where they are going back and asking organizations, what is your range? I would say my first piece of advice is to come up with a range. I think that's only fair to the person that you're looking to recruit or hire. But
no, they're looking to hire me.
Oh,
they're asking me. Yeah, they're looking to hire me, and they're asking me what's my salary target. But I want to ask them what's their range.
You're absolutely entitled to ask them what their budget is and say, what is your range? Like, what is your... In fact, a lot more people are doing this now, where the question used to come to us of people that were looking to be hired saying, what's your salary expectation? No, what's your budget, right? When you frame it like that, the responsibility is on them. And if they are unwilling to go that, you can do research on Glassdoor so that you can get an idea of what the salary band is for the title that you have. Also remember that the salary title that somebody offers you can also be changed to something else. You're not limited by that. So I hope that's helpful. I see Patrice May a little bit nodding, so hopefully you both can connect on that. And
Patrice, if you can give your LinkedIn, and I would love to connect with you if that's possible.
And Dominique, thank you. Pay scale is another one where you can gauge what the salary range is for
thank you.
The role that you're hiring. You're being recruited.
And you get one for free, so you can put in your experience and all of that, and it's free for the first one.
That's great.
And then KG also said some great information as well. Thank you so much, guys.
Of course. Well, I'm starting to feel like we're developing as a community more and more. So thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful, restful weekend. And we'll see each other on Tuesday.